Welcome, everybody, back to the post office in this week's edition of the Café Hangout.
Wait a minute. Are we taped or?
We are live.
That is the official. That's like the bell ringing for Festus to go into attack mode in the ring.
Oh,
for me
yeah.
On this show.
Oh, gotcha.
I need to hear Wai give those words for me to officially come out of my shell.
Well, wonderful. Attack away.
Wow.
Sick 'em, John.
Well, it's great to have everybody back here. We were off for a week. The Café Hangout was under extraordinary construction, but we have come back. It's a brand new studio now, powered by Wai's phone, along with the sultry tones of Z103.5's Hitmix 3.
Oh, what's on that?
This has some of my favorites, from Cascada to the Radical DJs with If Tomorrow Never Comes, which it technically never does. It is never tomorrow. DJ Company, Rhythm of Love, a classic. Laurent Conrad, Mr. Vegas, Carl Henry, and I know your favorite, Shabba Ranks, featuring Crystal, Twice My Age.
Okay.
Well, do you want to play Miracle? Do you want to play Breaking My Heart by Style Shaker?
I'd love to. I feel like YouTube would probably remove our video for flagging, but maybe off air.
You know why I have all these CDs out? I have acquired a CD player, Wai. I have not had a CD player in a long, long time.
Is that right?
I was able to get one, and now I can play CDs in here.
Oh, okay.
So the post office is just, we have graduated to 1984.
Is there actually a reason why? Like, you just wanted to listen to your old...
I literally just want to listen to these CDs. That's it. There's no ulterior motive behind it.
Usually people have like a CD like that lying around just because like...
I don't.
It was junk. But John...
All my CD players have been thrown out or just have died.
Okay. Well, you're a fascinating man.
Well, next on the list is to try and get this DVD player running, which I am about at the point where I'm going to have to ask Wai for help.
Well, you know what? I would say the first concern, I would say, technology-wise, is maybe our phone calls, where, as many people know, we've been having some issues here, but we have gone through extensive, like John wasn't kidding, we've gone through some renovations here, and the internet speed is supposed to have been quite improved here in the post office, but we shall really test it.
Yeah, we are also taking all of our calls through a pretty old iPad, which we have now upgraded to Wai's
not make
phone.
us seem that I don't know, advanced of an operation. Really.
I don't care. That's the nuts and bolts of this operation. Everybody, it is us versus the world. But we are going to be taking phone calls on this show and primarily focusing on your calls. We did not book a guest today. Number one, because we did not want to worry about technology kicking our ass on another guest. So you are our guinea pigs today. If you want to call in, 732-800-4423, or you can Skype in by searching for Post Wrestling. We'll be taking calls at any point during the show. Want to ask several questions, reaction to NXT going to the USA Network, but also what are your viewing habits going to be on Wednesday nights, whether you are in the US or abroad, and what options you have at your disposal to watch any of these shows live between NXT and All Elite Wrestling. And going into the fall, what do you figure is going to be your limit of wrestling you can watch in a given week? It is astounding. For me and Wai, it's astounding. I cannot imagine what the demand is on the fan base that I think is often a critical point that gets overlooked, that we will continue to throw so much at the fan base and they will just continue to devour it. Is there a breaking point? Maybe we've seen the declining numbers for WWE, but still sustainable enough that they are able to continue and churn out more and more content. But this fall is going to be the latest pressure point.
Certainly, yeah. I think we're already seeing, wrestling fans really pick and choose and relying on, outside sources such as podcasts like these or websites or YouTube highlights to kind of get their fill, to keep up to date. I feel like this is only going to ask the audience to really pick and choose that much more. So, how do you want to structure the show? Do you want to open it up to the phone lines? Or shall we get to some of these other stories first?
Let's go over a few news items, and then the phone lines will be open. So if you want to call, give us a couple of minutes, and then we'll be going to phone calls. But that's kind of the primary questions I have for people, are viewing habits for this coming fall. Another interesting story that we have coming out today, courtesy of The Hollywood Reporter, is that the WWE in the year 2019 is launching a podcast network through Endeavor Audio. This is, of course, under the umbrella of Endeavor, the parent company of UFC, and also the WWE streaming partner, because Endeavor Streaming, which replaced the existing agreement they had with BAMTech, Disney's company, Endeavor Streaming took that contract over to run the WWE network at the beginning of this year. So this is their audio side of things. They'll be launching a podcast network. Date to be determined. Shows to be determined. It is kind of just an overall announcement that they will be getting into the podcast space after kind of dipping their toe at different times. We saw years ago, right around WrestleMania, they did a limited series hosted by Renee Young. We have seen the Steve Austin podcast and kind of Chris Jericho's version, but that was for the WWE network. This seems like a much more concentrated effort to produce audio content and probably be based around a lot of WWE personalities. One of which, the Bella Twins, they are already attached to Endeavor Streaming. So that seems a layup that they would be included in all of this.
Yeah. Certainly, like podcasting and wrestling, obviously, you and I know from personal experience, the two have kind of gone hand in hand, really, I would say. And I think the WWE has certainly been behind the times, as far as that goes. But I'm sure they see, the success of Conrad Thompson, the success of Chris Jericho, the success of Steve Austin, and any number of guys who have had their own podcasts, and how much that has managed to do for the individual brands of the characters that are involved. And there's a huge roster of WWE talent out there that could really use that airtime that's not being given to them by what you see on screen. So instead, perhaps mandating some of those stars to make that connection with an audience through the form of podcasting. It's economical, doesn't cost really anything to do, and I think is another creative outlet for them to eventually monetize and also creatively fulfill the talent that they have.
The question will be, what is the benchmark that Endeavor Streaming has for these shows? I mean, you talk about kind of underserved talent on the roster. Do they want a podcast hosted by Drake Maverick, or do they want a Steve Austin level, which it's interesting because he had that long hiatus and just came back on Podcast One. You have Edge and Christian established on Westwood One. It's kind of, you have these existing shows that already are established. And to me, the most obvious fit here would be to try and grab an Eric Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard. Those shows hosted by Conrad Thompson, which is kind of, that's a complicated issue as well with WWE and Conrad Thompson through StarCast.
For sure, yeah.
But that would be the person that, if I'm Endeavor Streaming, like that, Conrad is kind of the go-to person now for wrestling podcasts that you would want to have. Like WWE, I think in a perfect world, would hand the keys over to Conrad Thompson to run this division.
Yeah, I would think so. But at the same time, if you're the WWE, what's stopping you from doing a similarly conceptually, similar type of show, but with one of your own guys? It won't be the same, and I think it would turn off a good deal of the audience, but they had that option of doing a similar type of show. The big question, of course, is...
Will WWE launch a Patreon?
We shall see. We shall see. But I think the big question is, because this is a WWE-produced product, how free is the discussion going to be? How hands-on will they be?
And how hands-on can they be? Will this be... Like, to me, I'm looking at, and again, this only came out, I don't have any, knowledge of what these shows are going to consist of, but I'm looking at the likes of a Renee Young, Pat McAfee, and I haven't watched a lot of the watch-along, but that is not something that you feel is under a microscope, that kind of a show, and that would be what you hope...
For now.
Like,
look at Talking Smack.
That's, I think, ultimately what you hope they can get into the podcast space, because it's not just the personalities. Yeah, that can be your jumping on point, but to continue listening to them, you're going to have some substance to it. And wrestling and WWE has no shortage of substance. These are very interesting characters that have audiences, but you also have to be giving them the content that is going to be competing with a very crowded market space.
Well, I mean, certainly they have the advantage as far as access. I mean, they have the whole roster. And promotion. Whereas, I would say podcasts such as Steve Austin's and Chris Jericho's that are interview driven, they've largely relied on access to stars to get my attention at least. And potentially, they've already been limiting podcasts like Jericho's from getting a lot of their own stars. I imagine that to be even more of a case now when they're producing their own shows.
My first show I would launch would be Renee Young getting to do interviews like that. And as they're coming up on the fall season, I would have Paul Heyman being brought on to discuss his role on Raw.
Yeah.
Conversely, one with Eric Bischoff. And I think that is something they need to be exploiting more, is making Heyman and Bischoff more of the front-facing figures of these shows as you're going into the fall season and promoting this. Vince McMahon isn't going out there doing interviews, but Heyman and Bischoff should be.
Do you see them doing that, though? Like, you mean having Paul Heyman out there
As the showrunner.
talking,
or at least as a
talking about
part of the
almost
decision-making process.
Yeah, we're almost talking about, at this point, like conference calls, talking about like
Yes.
the behind the scenes of the product. It would be a level of, I think, access and exposure that I don't know if the WWE traditionally has been, giving at all. So it'd be different.
I'm not saying to us either. I'm not expecting...
But it's to the audience.
It is. I think that there's a value to being on shows like ours, but I would be expecting more so that the Heyman and Bischoffs, that they would be talking to your entertainment sites and, your Yahoos, your entertainment weeklies, like that kind of media that is already having some kind of coverage, ESPN's, Bleacher Reports, putting these guys out there, because you need a lot of promotion, and those media outlets, Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, have currency with those outlets and those audiences. So
want to hear everybody's thoughts on this. But any other topics?
No, I mean, we don't have much more beyond just the announcement and when this will roll out. But I would imagine that this is something that, it's going to be a network as opposed to just some standalone show that they're going to be introducing. Though I mentioned to you in the Hollywood Reporter story, the photo they used was of AJ Styles, which you and I were discussing. What an AJ Styles podcast would be. Be quite something.
It would be.
Yeah.
It would be interesting.
Yes.
It would be interesting.
The world is your oyster. In a straight line.
We got our first phone call here.
Let's go.
Coming right up. And Neil, you are on the line. You are on the Café Hangout. What is up?
Hi there. It's good to see you guys. And I was with John, I have to say, way at the beginning of the show. Where was the "and we are live"?
I made him say it.
I'm out of practice.
You did.
I'm out of practice. I hope you're happy with what you had. After.
Oh God, yes, of course, yeah. But 1 week off and it just all, But I wanted to address John's questions really on this side of the Atlantic. I would say.
Neil, just explain where you live, just for everyone to understand.
Apologies, yes. I'm in Northern Ireland, so somewhat close to Belfast. Without getting all political about it, Northern Ireland's kind of part of the UK, so we get UK TV stations. The south of Ireland is its own independent republic and has its own, television stations and so on. But for the most part, there's not much difference.
And you're watching WWE currently on Sky, which is going to flip over to BT Sport in January.
Exactly, yes. And that was what I was going to mention, is that with NXT going live in September, to my mind, there has been no formal announcement as to what will happen, except that it'll be available 24 hours after it airs on
USA.
On USA, on the network. But that's 1 a.m. Over here. So whereas we know we're going to get AEW live, for those who want to stay up late anyway, on ITV4. So my viewing habits will be pretty simple. I mean, midweek, obviously staying up until 1 to start watching something is a little, that's why live viewing numbers in the UK and in Ireland are low anyway, because on a Monday night, people can't stay up until between 1 and 4 a.m. to watch Raw and then go to work the next morning, really. So I think most of us DVR these things and watch them as quickly as possible, avoiding spoilers on Twitter. That will be much more difficult with NXT, I think, because we won't even be able to watch it until Friday, effectively, when it's live.
So you're suggesting that you think for somebody in the UK, their choice is kind of automatically made with AEW being the priority.
I do think so, yes. And also, I just wanted to mention that, I mean, there have been on ITV1, which is a big TV channel here. It's sort of the equivalent of NBC or CBS in the States. It's probably the second most watched channel, and it's free to air, and it's, whether you've got cable, satellite, rabbit ears, it's one of those channels that's been around forever and everyone watches. And twice today I've seen a commercial on there for All Out at the end of next week. And you should go to itvboxoffice.com, and if you want to book it and blah blah blah. It's getting big exposure, and I think ITV4, although as a channel it's not as big as the main ITV channel, it's free to air. You don't have to subscribe to any package. AEW, I think, is going to win on head to head for all of those reasons on this side of the Atlantic. And as John mentioned, at the end of this calendar year, WWE programming is going to BT Sport, which is in far fewer homes. I think that should be a worry for WWE. I mean, I will continue watching it because I'm a pro wrestling head and I've been watching forever, but picking up new viewers is going to be tricky, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think in the UK, I mean, AEW has not formally announced the ITV4 deal yet, but I think everyone reads the tea leaves and expects that deal to be in place. But I mean, it's very far from being a head-to-head battle in the UK because there's no expectation right now NXT is even going to be airing on Sky. Nor would Sky probably be diving into a new series when they're kind of in this lame duck period before it flips over to BT Sport. Could you envision BT Sport having an appetite to pick up NXT live on Wednesday nights?
Yes, I do. I imagine WWE will offer them favorable terms to have the show live. They seem to have done that on the other side of the pond. So yeah, I can see that. There is a subset of people who do stay up. Occasionally if I'm off work, I will just randomly watch SmackDown at 1 a.m. I watched it on Tuesday night because I was off on Wednesday. So, but yeah, because of the timing of these shows, the live portion is always going to be a small audience because it's on very late at night. But as I said, I don't want to repeat myself too much. But that wait onto that's kind of waiting period to see it on the network. That could be a problem over here, I think. I also wanted. I know there's probably other people wanting to call in and give a more mainstream opinion, but I just wanted to also mention a quick question, actually, to you guys. Any prospective names for the AEW show? I mean, Rewind AEW doesn't really.
Oh, for our show. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't really trip
the
off
biggest
the tongue.
question, I would say, on everybody's minds, including our own.
Yeah.
I guess AEW has to name their show before we do.
Do you think they will?
Oh, sure. Of course, yes.
Or are they not just going to call it AEW?
The rumor was Wednesday Night Dynamite, isn't that right?
Yes. That was one of the names bandied about. I'm not a fan of the Dynamite name, but I mean, if
I think they should have a name. I think you want more than just simply All Elite Wrestling, because if you ever want to splinter off, create shoulder programming, I think you want to be able to decipher your program and have your flagship show have a name.
If they were to announce a name, probably All Out would be the time.
That would seem like, to put up a big reveal on the show. Maybe you have a show poster or something with the big name.
So I guess until then, we have yet to
All Elite Wrestling presents Boing on Wednesday nights with Kenny Omega. And
good night, goodbye, Boing. Okay,
Boing.
Got it. Yeah, well, we shall see.
Sure. And one more thing before I go, if you'll allow me, I just wanted to mention that the unintended funny elements of wrestling. I think that you guys, because last time I rang, you said I was very nice, so I'm going to be nice again. You guys amplify those things so well on your podcasts. I mean, over the years we've had big things like the Shockmaster falling through the wall. But the little things like TJP's promos,
a classic.
Aleister Black saying, being billed by, I think it was Cole, as fighting for all the blue collar 9-to-5ers will never not be funny to me.
I mean,
and
all the stuff these are jokes that they make themselves. Like which
I don't think are intended as comedy either.
Precisely, yeah. They're not meant to be funny, I don't think.
Like I don't feel the close of SmackDown was designed to be to have that reaction that would make it suitable for a Curb Your Enthusiasm meme.
That was exactly the other thing I was going to mention this week was that I think there was the guts of 60 seconds of everyone just staring at each other, looking baffled, was hilarious to me, and you could hear the crowd laughing as well. But I just wanted to give you guys props for really like drawing those things out, because that funny element of wrestling has always been there. It's something that I think us old fans, I say old, older fans really enjoy, and it's something that incidentally I think will be completely missing from any official WWE podcasting, because they'll want to do that. They still have that corporate identity thing, it'll all be quite controlled, I imagine, anyway. And finally, one last thing, listen to the Immigrant Hustle episode with Wai. It's terrific.
Oh, thank you so much.
Big eye opener on your way.
Thank you so much.
Really enjoyed.
The post wrestling media relations team really scored a home run on that one.
I actually recorded that like months ago, so I don't even remember like half the stuff that I've talked about. But thank you. The reception's been great. Thank you as always for the call, Neil. Much appreciated.
Not at all.
Take care.
Thanks for giving me so much of your time.
Phone lines are open, everybody. 1-732-800-4423, or search us on Skype. Post Wrestling. We are taking your calls all show.
Also want to make mention that we have the Super J Cup that is kicking off tonight from the Temple Theater in Tacoma, Washington. It continues Saturday in San Francisco. Those first two shows are sold out. And then Sunday, the semifinals and finals are in the Walter Pyramid in Long Beach, California. That show is not sold out, but opening round matches, they're doing the entire first round tonight. We've got Rocky Romero versus Soberano Jr., TJP Clark Connors, Bushi versus Caristico, Jonathan Gresham versus Ryusuke Taguchi, Robbie Eagles versus El Fantasmo, Yo versus Dragon Lee, Sho versus Taiji Ishimori, which is an interesting first round match because I would peg those two to have gone further in the tournament individually. And then the main event, Will Ospreay versus Amazing Red, along with a non-tournament match, Jushin Thunder Liger and Carl Fredericks versus Shota Umino and Ren Narita, which should be a really fun tag match as well. This looks like an awesome card. I am home tonight with no plans, and I have no ability to watch this.
Oh, man.
It really is baffling to me that I know that the argument is going to be, well, dude, do you remember the first J Cup and how long it took? Well, you know what? It ain't 1994 anymore. It's 2019. And this weekend, Wai, you are going to be able to watch Evolve live on Saturday night. Yeah. And New Japan cannot put a live broadcast out on New Japan World, on Fight TV. This is going to come out in September. And I maintain there is so much incredible wrestling. You have a very small window of relevancy. And then people move on. Yeah. And yes, people will go back and watch this, but it's not the amount that would have watched it live tonight.
I agree. I will say there would be some novelty to having to write in to receive a VHS of the Super J Cup 2019.
Well, you know what? You can do that next month after Battle of Los Angeles, where you can go and order a DVD to get the same thing.
But I think overall, to me, it tells you that New Japan isn't necessarily treating this event with that much priority. This nor Royal Quest to me, certainly
Royal Quest is even more stunning. That lineup, that is not a card that they are just doing for no reason. But it's very much a live event mentality. But
who knows what the holdup is? I'm sure whatever it is, maybe there's no excuse because
I don't think there is, because if it comes down to a technological issue or again, Evolve is running a live broadcast out of Livonia, Michigan on Saturday night.
Right.
So I don't get this. PWG even, I understand. There's a reason they opt not to do live streaming, and it's also talent that they're using, that it's not as though...
Could this be part of the situation with the J Cup?
No, because they have an agreement with CMLL. They use CMLL talent on... they appear on New Japan World. There's no holdup in that sense that would contractually restrict any of these performers from being on a live stream, and it's going to be streamed. These are going to be on demand on New Japan World. Right. So... it's 2019. I I don't understand this, and I think you're shooting yourself in the foot because the demand, if this is up in 2 weeks, it is not going to have the same demand as present moment when people are anticipating this. It's like, I think you will have those that will watch all 3 shows. Most will cherry pick, and a good portion will probably skip this because we're on to the destruction shows. We're on to the next event. Like, it's constantly moving in pro wrestling.
We have a lot of phone calls, a lot of people wanting to get in, so sorry if you can't reach it. We only have one line open right now, but do keep trying. We want to have time for everybody to get on
Let's
this
keep
show.
going with the calls.
Our next caller, you're on the line. What's up?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, my God.
Is this Brandon from Etobicoke?
Mr. Etobicoke himself. You know, I left an opening at our live event for you to make your grand entrance, and I was sorely disappointed that nobody...
I know, I heard. I didn't want to big league you guys.
You did big league us. You didn't come. You didn't say hello. Nothing. You got our hopes up, and then poof, you just disappeared.
You weren't at the... I didn't see you at the meet and greet. What happened with that?
Meet and greet? What are you talking about?
There was no one else to meet and greet beyond us. We were there meeting and greeting.
I shook Way's hand.
Oh, okay. You mean the tailgate. Well, John had left. You showed up with like 10 minutes to go before we all had to leave. So, I mean, really, Brandon has become the fiend of post wrestling. He's the fiend before the fiend. You expect him to show up and he doesn't, and when he does, the lights go out. And
they do have a similar laugh.
Oh, definitely.
Gentlemen. Come on. There was like 35 minutes to spare, number one. Number two, my Uber driver, Edwin, by the way, he was telling me the great history of Toronto and Montreal, why they hate each other. It was 45 minutes. It was 45 minutes. No. He was just the Montreal people, how they with the English and stuff like that. He was just telling me the history of that in general. But regardless, it was a lot of traffic getting into the city. And number three, I was an idiot for staying in what do you call that town?
I think you stayed in Vaughan, actually. Like, you're even further. Anyway, we digress. What is on your mind, Brandon?
I have a couple questions. I don't want to hog your time. But I'm going to Japan for the Dome show, so maybe we could meet.
No, you know what? How about we all go to the Tokyo Dome both nights, and then you call us the following week to tell us that you were there. Let's all go across the world to the same building in front of the biggest weekend of the year in Japan. Let's sit a row across from each other and not talk and not acknowledge each other, and then we'll talk about it on this show the following week when you call in from another country. I might have killed him.
Oh, that'd be a great rib, wouldn't it?
I don't know who the joke is on. Us or you? You're the one doing all this traveling. You're going very far not to say hello to us.
You taking this to the front, John. I'm stacked. Anyway, I love you guys, but really, what do you think of the scalping community taking advantage of the AEW shows and especially, I guess Dave said in DC, like the show's tanking or whatever because
tanking would be I don't think that's an accurate statement. I mean, there have been a ton of scalper buys for the show, and now you're seeing those tickets unloaded, so you can get into the Capital One Center very cheap because the scalpers expected a huge demand for the show, and it's an enormous arena.
So I guess the other question is, though, if the scalpers were not involved, how well would that show be selling? Are people, who would want to go anyway, were they simply giving up after the fact that they couldn't get in after the original sale and not necessarily looking at the aftermarket yet?
Brandon, what was the figure of seats that are available right now on the secondary market? Do you have that figure?
No, I don't have it offhand, but it's a good amount, I heard.
Well, I mean, I feel like in the end, the perception is that AEW is still selling really well. I mean, by the time that show comes around, I have to imagine that the building will still look pretty good. And I don't necessarily see being that much of a hindrance. I think once this becomes adjusted for some of these other shows, if scalpers in, say, Pittsburgh or Charleston are a bit more cautious about how much they buy and not having a potential effect on the sellout, but that it was always inevitable that AEW wasn't going to sell out.
I think the demand is still there that you've seen in other markets. It's just Washington. It's that much bigger of a building. And it was also the first show. So it was going to have, the other ones have not had that same kind of level from scalper interest. This is from The Observer. Okay, so Dave writes, at press time, there were 4,700 tickets on the secondary market for the first show on TNT. That's new tickets because the issues that led to people thinking the first show was sold in 6 minutes led to a high scalper demand, and those on the resale market made a killing for an hour the day tickets went on sale. But for pro wrestling, aside from major shows in the New York market for WrestleMania, this had the highest broker buys versus fan buys for any show. It's led to flooding orders as ticket brokers wanted to get in. The overflow has led to an $8 secondary market bottom price, which he says is unusually low.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's
How do you think they'll do tomorrow?
I think they're going to do very good. And I think
They're-
both shows are going to do very well. I'm hesitant to say we'll get immediate sellouts for both, but
They're
I've been
tough.
mistaken many
we've been
times.
through this many times.
Yes. So what do you feel, Brandon? I'm thinking that it is going to be 80% sold for each building tomorrow, and maybe I'm
I think they'll
being
do-
pessimistic.
I think they'll do good, but they're like West Virginia and Pittsburgh. Those are tough cities to.
West
And
Virginia is
for
a very
wrestling-
strong, like Charleston has been a very strong market for them when they've been going by their just the BR Live numbers. So it's a deceptively small part of the country, but also
They've also promoted
has a solid base.
The culmination of the tag team tournament. for that
Pittsburgh,
show.
I think Pittsburgh, like there's many surrounding cities that you can draw from. That you're also on college campuses. That I think is overall a help in terms of just general interest in the lead up to the show. So I'm hesitant to kind of underestimate what they've been able to do.
And one more question before I get out of here. Is World Quest and Super J Cup, is that going to be 24 hours after the broadcast?
They haven't announced. I don't expect 24 hours later. I think the both have been said for September. So the J Cup, no, it's going to be several weeks from now.
That's crazy. And one more thing, John, specifically to you. I don't know if it weighs into the 90210 reboot.
No.
But what other people would you like to see come back? Would you like to see Nat's Bookie Duke or Dylan's drug dealer or Donna's abusive boyfriend Ray Pruitt? John, how do you talk to an angel? I'm out of here.
Goodbye, Brandon.
How do you talk to an angel?
Maybe Lucinda Nichols will return.
Okay.
Okay.
Our next caller. You're on the Café Hangout.
It's your second favorite son from New Jersey.
Oh boy. Wow, MJ. You are somebody who did show your face on multiple evenings.
Yeah, we drew well from the state of New Jersey, allegedly.
Hey, Brandon gets a bad rap. That's a cool dude. I enjoyed hanging out with him at the tailgate and wandering the streets of Toronto. Good dude.
We'll take your word for it because he remains elusive.
You know, Brother Nate made a great point in the forum. We had some nice debates going on about the NXT to Wednesday thing, USA thing.
What do you
They
say?
have not made NXT appointment television the way All Elite has made pretty much everything they do, including these ticket sales, appointment viewing, appointment activity. So to the degree that they're going to be live, I mean, I'm somebody that watches 2 or 3 shows. I binge them before a takeover. I'm very up on the product, but it's not appointment viewing. And I think that's going to play a big factor into how they do with the move to USA. I thought that was a great point by Brother Nate. And
but I mean, we haven't seen what the new NXT is going to look like. And I think, to be fair, we haven't really seen what AEW is going to look like on a week-to-week basis.
No, but AEW has trained their fans to at least tune in to pretty much everything they do live. I got to be honest, if the new NXT is different than the old NXT, I think that's troubling. Because what's made that brand so great is that it has been different. And if they try to mess with that recipe, it's, something to be cautious with. Because
I don't think
what
you're going to see that
TakeOver's
out of
gonna
the
look
gate,
like?
MJ. I think from the start, I think you're going to see a relatively similar product that is going to be absolutely prone to changes based on performance. But I think show one, I think you're largely going to see the NXT that you have at the moment, and seeing, throwing this against the wall and seeing what is the response to it.
I think you will see something closer to the takeover level of quality with NXT, at least for the first couple weeks, and certainly peaking for that October 2nd show.
Sure.
Well, let's talk about that takeover formula then, because I'm somebody who flew to Toronto and really only cared to go to takeover live as far as wrestling shows, because it's 5 matches, high quality, you're in, you're out, 3 hours, done. Takeover's now going to have to, accommodate 2-hour television booking, and you could be looking at 10 matches, and now all of a sudden it becomes a 4-hour show, and are they going to do, the whole thing is to be determined, but you can see where they're going to have to start tweaking formulas that have historically been very good for them, and at what cost? To alienate current fans that are probably AEW crossover fans, to gain casual fans, which, are they even sure who their casual fans are? So all to be determined, but very interesting times, to say the least.
Philosophically, I feel like we've seen, Paul Levesque and his crew be very cautious of the fact that shows aren't going too long, and I imagine this is a strength of the takeover shows that they will continue to maintain despite having a 2-hour show every single week. I mean, I don't necessarily see having extra hours as a hindrance, and an automatic fact that takeovers are going to be 10 matches long. I think it provides opportunity for you to create main events for your weekly TV shows that are going to need them.
If they could achieve those kind of level of television matches, and you just went to a live taping, so with commercials, how that all goes.
It's true,
if
yeah.
They can maintain that level, that's awesome.
That's a great question.
I have my questions about it.
That's a great question. At a live NXT taping, what are the commercial breaks going to look like, and how will they affect these matches?
Kind of shifting to the podcast news that came out today, I see this as a direct shot at StarCast. I think they're going to make a huge money offer to Conrad Thompson. I think this is absolutely a reactionary thing to do, because the barrier to entry to podcasting has not been very high over the last few years as the medium has kind of grown. You have these other talents that are on Legend deals doing shows on other networks. Westwood One, you have the other, I think Austin, wherever he is, not Westwood One, but
Podcast One.
All of a sudden, Podcast One. So why now? Except for the fact that they are directly taking shots at AEW, by association StarCast. They had the run-in with StarCast in Vegas with having talent that they wanted to pull from that. You go out and you make Conrad Thompson a huge money offer, and you bring all that audience into your house. I think that's the move. If it's not, very questionable. And then there was one other thing I wanted to touch on, but I'll take a second there.
No, I really don't think that this is going to be something that you I wouldn't necessarily see that as the play. I think honestly, Endeavor streaming is, this is probably something that's been at their doorstep for a while. To, it was inevitable with them moving over to Endeavor that this would be a natural way to go about it. What I can see is them being aggressive of trying to get Eric Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard to do their shows under this new umbrella. But I think the key to those shows is Conrad, and I would have a hard time imagining Conrad coming into this. And if he was, I think he would have been front and center on this announcement.
It's also
StarCast.
Sorry, what? What was that?
Would he be front and center before they do StarCast next week? Or would it be after StarCast that he then introduces himself as, hey, I'm pretty much done with StarCast and I'm going to do this? And does WWE want StarCast? Do they want their own version of that to change how they do access?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of speculation for all of those things to happen. We also don't even know necessarily the future of StarCast, whether or not AEW will be, whether or not we don't know how this StarCast is going to do. Let's just say that. Whether or not there's going to be enough demand for multiple StarCasts per year after this initial buzz for AEW already dies down. It's a lot to be determined.
Yeah. So the other thing I just wanted to, in trying to shifting continents, that Bloomberg article on New Japan, quite revealing on some of the numbers. Kind of don't get those numbers from a wrestling company very, very often, but obviously now that they're public, they're going to make those available. The 4 out of 10 women thing, that was fascinating. And if you look at Japan's pop culture track record of creating IP and being able to get across kind of their pop culture into mainstream American culture, they have a track record. They have success. So I kind of thought that was really telling as to how they view their intellectual property, their characters, and what might come of that as you now have a public company looking to increase revenue streams, with New Japan being a catalyst.
Yeah, I think that it's with New Japan, I think it shines a light on where they are within their marketplace. I didn't look at it as anything like completely revelatory about New Japan's business, other than it's further insight into seeing like what their one of the big takeaways from that article is their global expansion that they are hopeful of, and using video streaming as a key component of that. And I mean, that circles back to our argument here. Are they necessarily ready for those big steps where you can take New Japan to other countries, but are you at a point now where you can fully maximize the value of a Super J Cup tournament or a Royal Quest to your global audience if we can't even do live streaming? Like that was a component of that article, was using video streaming to kind of take this product outside of just a Japanese core fan base.
The Royal Quest streaming, what I'm going to call it debacle, is kind of egg on the face. You're going to go to the UK and do a live event where you're featuring a title match, an IWGP title match, and you're not going to show that live. It kind of, to me, shows, like, to your point, are you ready to do this? The money that New Japan is generating, when you convert that to US dollars, I'm pretty sure the NXT deal is going to be worth more than that altogether. Kind of gives you a good insight as to where things rank in terms of companies making money off of their television or their wrestling content. And then you got AEW, who, to knowledge, is not making a dollar off of television content. So these numbers all recently that are coming out, very, very interesting. And I could see WWE wanting to push a lot of this to kind of emphasize, hey, we are the player in this space. And everybody else that's trying to do this, they may be making waves and they may be getting hype, but don't forget who has the money here. And money, dollars king.
Thanks for the call, MJ. Got a few
Bye.
more people. See ya. All right.
Let's keep going.
Yes, phone lines are open, everybody. Please keep calling in if you are having trouble connecting. We will take your calls as they appear. Any thoughts on where MJ kind of left off there?
No, well, we covered a lot of ground in that call. I think that as we kind of look towards this this period, especially with NXT moving to the USA Network, I think it's going to be really interesting those first couple of weeks once we have the head-to-head competition, looking at where AEW is going to be available beyond just the US on TNT. What are their international deals that are going to be in place? Because, from just asking around, like, it doesn't seem like there's any kind of movement on NXT being available anywhere beyond the USA Network to the American audience. Like, it seems that the answer is it's on 24-hour delay. And the fact that WWE was so steadfast, because you have to imagine USA doesn't necessarily want NXT to be available 24 hours later. You would think that was a battle WWE won in this negotiation. Mm-hmm. And the reason they fought for that was the international viewership and maintaining that for the network. Yeah. Which is tough, because in one sense, you're battling for head-to-head numbers, and that is a clear way for, that's going to apply to your American viewers as well, having this 24-hour delay instead of a 7-day delay or even a 30-day delay, which would drastically change things.
We go to our next call right now. You're on the Café Hangout. What's up?
What's going on? It's
Hansi, what's going on?
What's going on, guys? As far as the watching habits, I'm still unsure where Canada falls in, so it's like a wait-and-see attitude.
Well, let's put it this way, Hansi. If it starts as it is now, where it's airing on Thursday nights, are you going to be watching AEW? You'll be able to find a stream of NXT, and I think that's what you're essentially going to be pushing a lot of international viewers to do, because they're going to want to watch it live. Would that be something, or are you just going to wait till it's on the network?
Well, I guess I mean, if worse comes to worse, I'll have to wait till the network. But I did want to do dual viewership. Like, I wanted to watch both, but
at the same time.
Yeah, the same time, kind of. I would have
That's part of the fun, though. You know,
That doesn't sound fun to me.
for the first week it'll be fun. After that,
Yeah,
maybe.
for the first, yeah, that's true. It'll get tiresome after a while, but you know, but my main question, I don't know if this has been addressed, like in I don't even know if it really matters to a lot of people, but to me at least, since NXT is becoming a third brand, right? So now, do you think the NXT world title is qualified as a world title? Like now, with this lineage being a main roster title now, do you think now you can say, Sami Zayn was a former world champion, or Samoa Joe was a former world champion? Hell, even Bo Dallas, a former world champion. Like, do you think that they're going to incorporate the...
I feel like the Bo Dallas reign will kind of exist in the same realm of Maple's King of the Ring win and Billy Gunn's King of the Ring win. Certainly, I feel they will be a lot more protective of the NXT title. Triple H, of course, will be a lot more protective now. Much of it, I think, has to do with what the hierarchy now is of somebody's path from NXT to quote unquote, the main roster, when NXT really has become the main roster itself. So I obviously, I don't think you'll see somebody like Adam Cole lose the belt and then all of a sudden just to go up to the main roster as like a nobody, go on Raw and SmackDown and just get jobbed out. I think you will see somebody like of his status be elevated on an equal level, at the very least, to above an IC level competitor.
Okay, I hear you. And you guys didn't address this, but I'm not sure if it's a big enough news story. But I guess I was reading Reddit, and something, I forget what the terminology was, but CM Punk, apparently his management or something like that has reached out to, like, they asked him to do a talk show or
the
do
FS1
something
show.
On the FS1, yeah. So I was wondering, you guys had any update on that? Do you, like, is this a way for him to kind of get more money at an AEW offer, or do you think that he will actually go back and do the WWE thing? And I'll just leave you guys with that. And thanks for all the good work you guys do.
Thank you, Hansi.
Yeah, so the story, and it was in the Observer today, was about CM Punk is represented by CAA, which is also works with WWE, and allegedly it was Punk's agent who threw out the idea of Punk co-hosting this show on FS1, the studio show that they're going to do. And that's kind of where it's at. It's not a story that came out of left field for me. I had heard from one person a few weeks ago that I didn't have the specifics about it and couldn't confirm it. So, like, I don't doubt that there is certainly smoke to this, but what it ultimately represents, is this a leverage play? Is this just merely testing the waters of seeing what this is? Is this something Punk is even wholeheartedly interested in? I cannot give you those answers.
Yeah. It, certainly the way everything unfolded, it's still really hard for me to believe, like, Punk going back to the WWE in any capacity this soon. But again, I don't know where his really his headspace is. We know from Vince's past that nobody's off the table. If it means good for something that'll help business, they will welcome you to the fold. Personally, I see this maybe more of just a leverage play. But if he announces the deal, I wouldn't be that shocked.
I think that it's, we always say never in wrestling, but it's like the old adage that time heals all wounds, but there hasn't been enough time yet. There could very well come a time when he just suddenly has a change of heart. This was a guy that used to, at one time, was absolutely in love with professional wrestling, and a guy that was completely out of it, out of love of wrestling, and just completely turned it off. And it's not to say that he wakes up one day and wants to revisit this. It's hard to imagine, given the court case that went down, that Punk is an extremely stubborn individual, that he would go back. But I don't dismiss anything, and him being involved in that studio show, it's almost like several degrees of separation from everything he disliked about WWE while still being a WWE property. But I mean, for Fox Sports, that'd be a great coup for them.
It would be great. I think actually it would be great for the WWE for this type of show. But is this show really the best place, if you're the WWE, to use CM Punk? Like, would you want him in, I think, what
Well, of course,
We can-
they would want him in a more significant role, but
And-
that
and-
might not be on the table.
But I mean, a role where he's more controlled. Like, I mean, we don't know what type of role this is going to be. I would assume that this will be somewhat of a scripted thing. But if it's live, do you want necessarily somebody like CM Punk, somebody who's you've had litigation against, necessarily be in control of that narrative with your live audience?
I don't even know if this studio show is live or not, or if it's taped.
Right. Okay.
That's I just don't know even what the answer is.
It just seems like an awkward fit, like CM Punk on a WWE post show. But anyway, anything could happen.
Yeah, so it's kind of a story that, I mean, it's there. Whether there's substance to it, we'll see. It could just be simply seeing what the temperature is like. And again, it seems like it was an intermediary that threw this, and this might have just came up as a hypothetical within, like, you don't even know what the context of how this even came up, because it's a hard one to imagine, but not completely one that you would dismiss either.
Also, a bit of clarification from wrestling from Dave Meltzer recently about the kind of details of the NXT TV deal.
Yeah, so we've seen several figures thrown out for what NXT is going to be paid. It had been mentioned by Dave earlier this week that the floor was $50 million
A year.
a year. And then Guggenheim, which is like an analysis firm, they put out a figure of $30 million per year. And it seems that is
Or is it $30 million over 2 years?
No, $30 million per
Okay.
year. So that would be 60 over the course of 2.
Okay.
So it seems that's kind of the neighborhood. It's kind of a 30 to 50 per year, which is obviously a bit of a gap, but that's kind of what we're looking at.
Okay.
So, minimum 30 million per year seems to be
Right, yes.
at least what we can gather from this, which is, it's something for NXT. Like it's not an insignificant
More
amount.
than what it was before.
It's about, $577,000 per week. And especially if it's a 2-year deal, they could be in a position where if this thing is doing like 1.2, 1.3 million viewers every week, when those 2 years are up, they could see a dramatic increase at that point, not knowing where USA Network is at. This could become a valuable property for them. And if it's anything above that, I would say that's a big hit for them if they can even come close to the audience SmackDown was doing on Tuesday nights.
Yeah. How do you think this affects, contracts and movement between rosters for?
I think it's what we always talk about, is that WWE is hitting this record revenue, and it's going to be incumbent on these performers. Like, from all indications, the WWE is not giving small contracts out. I mean, it sounds like
Not anymore.
even low guys that you would be surprised by are getting like double for contract renewals. So it's got there is significant money being thrown out. And I would say that for the NXT people, this is a time to probably be very aggressive if you have a contract coming up in the next 6 months to a year, and realizing that there's a lot of money coming in, and WWE's in a position that they do not want to be losing anybody at the moment. So you do have serious leverage at the moment. And I think that it's ultimately you be aggressive, and it seems that WWE is certainly willing to pay right now because they don't want to lose anybody. So I think it's a good time to be a performer if you have a contract coming due, which makes the Roman Reigns renewal would be really interesting to see. This is a guy who made it very clear he was not going anywhere. Did the opposite of what a Brock Lesnar approach would have been, and you would figure Roman Reigns could cash in as much as anyone right now.
You had some really interesting comments on Errol Helwani's MMA Reporter show this week, talking about Brock Lesnar and how AEW might really play a factor in his upcoming future negotiations.
Well, it comes down, Lesnar has a deal now with WWE, which is reportedly up May or June of next year. So he just turned 42. So he'll be about to turn 43 when that deal's up. And what is he going to want to do at that point? Is that does he have an end date in sight? He's obviously going to keep that very quiet, but let's, just for the sake of this argument, suppose that he wants to continue. He wants to sign another contract. He came back to the WWE at a point when most wrestlers didn't have significant leverage with WWE. He did with UFC, and he was very smartly able to play one off the other consistently throughout this entire period of this run. And he's always been able to get a great deal. Went back to the UFC in 2016. Now, if AEW is a success, I'm not saying AEW would be throwing the money that WWE would be willing to offer, but I think that if he wanted to play off someone, he would absolutely hear what they have to say, and he doesn't need UFC as he did even a year ago. Now he has this other promotion in place that he could play off of as well, on top of the UFC. I think he can play everyone off each other and may have a third party involved. So if he wants to sign another deal after this one, I have no doubt in my mind that WWE will once again come to the table and will pay him an extraordinary amount of money again.
Yeah.
He knows how to play his cards significantly well. I would say, though, him fighting again, I really see that as a really, really small percentage chance at this age, and knowing that WWE will pay him an enormous amount. And I think at this stage, when you're approaching 43, now what we don't know is in this latest deal, whether or not he's even allowed to fight. You would think with them spending so much, like the whole point of a contract is like, you don't want this guy to be able to say, I'm taking off 5 months to do a training camp and fight.
If anything, I think the WWE would be interested in that simply to avoid Brock continuing to build that leverage with the other side. But I'm sure that's something he would have fought for in his contract as well.
Yeah, but Brock's in all of their immediate plans for through this period of time. So, but yeah, the fight to make in UFC, if he were to do it, it would be Jon Jones. I mean, that would be the fight that Lesnar would want, that Jones would want, and the UFC would want. For Jones right now, after the Daniel Cormier loss, yeah, he was very smart to jump on these comments this week of, going right after Lesnar to try and goad him, because for Jon Jones, like, his big blockbuster fights, diminished after Cormier lost on the weekend.
Any other news bits before we kind of wrap up at the top of the hour here?
No, we have, it's not a crazy weekend, but there are a number of shows.
Yeah.
Not all of them you can watch, but the ones you can, we are going to have post shows after Evolve on Saturday and Sunday night. You'll be joining Davey Portman on Saturday.
Yes. On the Up Next feed, Davey Portman will be reviewing a number of the Evolve shows going forward. From what I understand, I will be joining him for one of these on Saturday evening, and then on Sunday he will be joined by Solomon Sounds Off, Jason Solomon.
Solomonster. Sounds Off.
Solomonster, yes.
Jason Solomon, he will be with Davey on Sunday night. We'll also have 2 editions of Cruel Summer coming out Saturday and Sunday morning. And Friday, look out for the bonus edition of the British Wrestling Experience, as Jamesy will be joined by Alan Coonahan, Alan Forel from pwtorch.com, chatting his article on the top 50 UK matches of all time.
It's a huge week for post wrestling, and I think it's also a huge weekend for John Pollock, because he'll be actually going to the cottage.
I will have no cell phone reception. I can't wait.
The end of cottage season, I would say.
Yeah, this is it. It was either this or Labor Day weekend, and Labor Day weekend's a bit busy for us.
John, please enjoy it. Thank you so much for the extra help while my computer's been in the shop and still remains in the shop. I hope I have an update on that after this particular show.
It's day to day.
It's yes. And as well, thank you. Please enjoy it until October when the craziness occurs. And thanks to everybody for joining us today on the Café Hangout.
A lot of great callers. Yeah. We appreciate everyone dialing in today. And yeah, we'll be back next week on the Café Hangout, and lots of great shows to check out this week, both at postwrestling.com and if you're a patron at postwrestlingcafe.com, where we just dropped the double shot.
Yes, and also Friday, the return of our MCU reviews, talking about Doctor Strange, which strange would be how I would classify our review of it, where John and I
contemplated mortality.
Yeah, it was definitely one of our most interesting shows, and I'm very proud of it. So please tune into that on the Patreon feed.
Goodbye.